If you're starting a nonprofit, trying to recruit board members for a nonprofit, or even thinking about serving as a board member yourself on a nonprofit, it's really important for you to understand the legal and ethical duties of all nonprofit board members. So in this Changemaker Cafe episode, we're going to talk about what those legal and ethical responsibilities are. We're going to talk about why they matter. And then we'll also go through some tips for how you can make sure that you and your board are able to uphold them with integrity. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more content all about nonprofits, social entrepreneurship, fundraising, and more. And as always, thank you to Click and Pledge for sponsoring this content. So let's jump right in. In the nonprofit world, these legal and ethical responsibilities that I am referring to are called fiduciary duties. And these fiduciary duties are basically the rules that nonprofit board members are expected to live by in order to make sure that the organization is well governed and is achieving its mission, etc. Basically, taking a step back, when nonprofits are formed, they are required by the IRS to have some number of board members, usually elected from the community, to serve as the governing body of that organization. And the IRS basically says, okay, nonprofit, if we're going to give you these tax benefits, then we expect your organization to act only in the interest of its own mission and not in the personal interests of its leaders or board members. So that's really what we mean when we're talking about legal and ethical responsibilities. And there are three fiduciary duties in particular that I'm going to talk through. It's the duty of care, the duty of loyalty, and the duty of obedience. Let's talk about duty of care first. Duty of care basically means that the board members are being thoughtful and intentional and able to make informed decisions for the organization. So that's why it's really important for board members to receive financial reports and updates on things that are going on, because if they don't know what's going on in the organization, then they can't make those informed decisions about what to do strategically for the organization next. And they will also be ill-equipped to handle any crises that happen, financial or otherwise, for the organization if they don't have this information. Now, this doesn't mean micromanaging everything or getting into the weeds of everything. The expectation here is that board members will take the amount of care a reasonably prudent person will take in assessing a situation and staying informed about a situation. So what does this look like practically? Well, someone who is on a board and is fulfilling their duty of care adequately might make sure that they're attending the board meetings regularly, for example, to hear what's going on. It could look like making sure that the board members are reading all of the materials that have been supplied to them in advance. It could look like being engaged in the meetings, asking really good and important questions to make sure that they understand how things work and the issues that are at play. Let's talk about a real life example. Let's say your organization has the potential to partner with the city on some major contract to do some work that relates to your mission. A board member upholding their duty of care would make sure that they really understand what's in the contract, that they've asked any questions that they have about it, and that they've engaged in a meaningful discussion with their fellow board members on whether this contract really aligns with the mission of the organization. All right, let's talk about the next one, which is duty of loyalty. And I know it's like a fancy word, but basically all this is talking about is that in the context of serving on a nonprofit board, the board member is going to put the nonprofit's needs ahead of their own personal needs. What this looks like in practice is that these board members are going to avoid conflicts of interest. So these are situations that might come up where some decision the organization needs to make could end up benefiting one of the nonprofit board members personally or professionally. So a board member following their duty of loyalty would need to disclose that potential conflict of interest and recuse themselves from any vote related to that conflict of interest. It's essentially about never using their board position for inappropriate personal gain. So let's talk about An example of how this could come up in real life, let's say one of your board members owns a catering business and your organization is hosting a fundraising event where they need catering. That board member should disclose their connection to that catering business and not be a part of any vote where the organization is deciding which catering business to use. It isn't to say that the nonprofit couldn't choose to use that board member's catering business. They just need to be able to make decisions about whether to use that business in an unbiased and fair way. Maybe it really does have the best price for what the organization needs. It's all about disclosing and being transparent about those conflicts and making sure that you aren't personally influencing the outcome to benefit yourself or your own business as a board member. Okay, the third one is a little confusing here, and I'll explain why. It's the duty of obedience. And this is not about the board member being obedient to the organization, because that sounds a little strange. It's more about the board member helping the organization make sure it is obedient to its own mission and to the law. Your organization should always be, in everything that it does, from its program design to its outreach to its fundraising, be thinking about and orienting everything towards your public serving mission, the one that you state on your website, and also the one that you told the IRS you were fulfilling when you started the organization. Of course, if you change your mission over time and you update the IRS with your new mission, that's okay, but that's the topic probably of a different video. Anyway, so board members have to, in their role, make sure the organization is staying aligned with that mission. They also have to make sure that the organization is staying aligned with its own laws, aka your bylaws document, which is your governing document outlining how you plan to govern your board and manage, removing people from the board or bringing new people onto the board, and how many votes are needed to pass a vote, etc. And also that the organization is adhering to the laws of the land. So, for example, the IRS requires nonprofits to file annual 990 tax forms. A board member needs to be diligent and know that the organization has done that every year. Another example might be many states require a charitable solicitation license in order for your nonprofit to be legally allowed to fundraise in your state. So board members should be aware of the fact that you have that and help make sure that it's staying up to date. Part of this is also about making sure that the organization is behaving ethically. I can see this coming up, for example, during a donor privacy situation. So board members need to make sure that there's policies developed and being followed that protect donor intent and donor privacy or client data, etc. So in the real world, this might look like, let's say a major donor comes along and makes a donation to your organization and says, I really only want this to be spent on scholarships. Your board needs to make sure that it is only being spent on scholarships. It's following that donor intent. That's one of those ethical rules that we're talking about. One thing that can really help your organization adhere to donor intent and track those donations is a great fundraising platform. So it's a great time to thank the sponsor of this video, Click and Pledge. With Click and Pledge, you and your board are going to get a robust dashboard where you can plan your fundraising campaigns and monitor your progress. You'll get highly customizable donation forms, in-person fundraising features to collect money at events, peer-to-peer fundraising features so your supporters and board members can go out and raise money from their networks for your cause, video fundraising with donation links embedded directly in the video, text to give campaigns, and donor outreach tools to improve retention, a complete Salesforce integration, and like a lot of other integrations. Some platforms are going to charge more based on your organization's size, but not Click and Pledge. The pricing is going to stay the same even as your donor list size increases. And I know that that's really important as organizations grow. Organizations can do all this without contracts, and all the solutions are included at no extra cost. You can learn more about Click and Pledge's fundraising solutions and get your first $25 monthly fee waived using the links below this video or the QR code here. Get in contact with their team to ask questions or schedule a demo, or sign up to give it a try right now. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about the consequences of board members not upholding these fiduciary duties that we're talking about. And I think sometimes we think about board service as, well, it's a volunteer role, it's unpaid, so you do your best and then there are no consequences if something goes wrong. But As the governing body of your nonprofit, according to the IRS, you actually have some liability if things go wrong in the organization. Now, before you get too scared, I do want to say that there's this thing called directors and officers insurance, sometimes called D&O insurance. And the whole purpose of this insurance is to add an extra layer of liability protection for your board members. If something goes wrong, then this insurance will protect them from personal liability unless those board members were not acting in good faith. Let's say they misused nonprofits' assets. They could face a civil lawsuit. Or if a violation leads to financial losses for the nonprofit, they would have to reimburse that cost out of pocket. So I always recommend getting that directors and officers insurance. It'll probably cost you a couple $100s per year, sometimes more depending on the situation, but it is a good investment. And I know a lot of people that I talk to who are thinking of serving on nonprofit boards won't even do it unless the organization has that insurance in place. Now, this is rare, but there could also be criminal liability. If a board member is embezzling or something, they could go to jail or face fines. So those situations are very rare, but just saying, like, board members are responsible for when they're not acting in good faith. The nonprofit doesn't simply absorb all those issues. But the nonprofit does face its own set of consequences also. First, you've got reputation. When there's a story in the news about some organization whose board member committed fraud, then trust is disintegrated. People don't want to donate as much to that organization, and it takes time to recover from that sort of damage. The IRS can also put penalties on your organization if it violates any of the rules, like failing to file your annual paperwork or providing excessive personal benefit to a staff member. Organizations that have repeat offenses could lose their tax-exempt status. All this is to say it is very important to uphold these fiduciary duties and equip your board members to be able to do so to the maximum extent possible. Let's talk about some tips and best practices that you can implement in your organization if you're not already, to make sure that your board members are feeling really equipped and empowered to uphold these fiduciary responsibilities. The first is you have to make your board members aware of these expectations and rules before they even join your board. Personally, I would put this in a nonprofit board description or application. Whatever potential board candidates are seeing before you vote them onto your board, I would put it there. After they join your board, a training or orientation is really important. You should be talking about these 3 fiduciary duties, talking about how your bylaws work and where to find all of the important policies and documents and financial statements for your organization, and make sure that they have access to be able to look at all of this stuff so that they can be informed for your organization. At the very least, you should also have a conflict of interest policy, a whistleblower policy, and a document retention policy so that you can protect your organization from some of the potential conflicts that could arise. Keeping accurate board meeting minutes and records is also really important. Board members should be able to go back and see when a vote happened and how many votes it passed by. Board members should be receiving regular financial reports so that they understand how the organization is financially healthy. I recommend monthly reports. Obviously, this can vary based on when your board meetings are, but probably no rarely than quarterly, perhaps. And every year, I also recommend a board evaluation where the board self-assesses how they think they are doing in terms of being informed, engaged, understanding how the organization's mission and finances works. Doing a board evaluation like that can also really help you identify any gaps in knowledge. So if a lot of people are like, yeah, I'm really confused about our finances, then that tells you maybe you need to do another board training on your finances and make sure everyone has time to ask questions, for example. So that's a quick overview of a nonprofit board of directors, legal and ethical duties, aka fiduciary duties. I'm really curious, have you all talked about this in your own organization? What are some of the common questions that you get from board members about this stuff? Drop them in the comments because I'm thinking about doing an extended video that's like a board training for your board members. And if that would be of interest to you, I want to know so I can see if I should go make that video. I hope this helped you out. As always, please don't forget to give it a like so that the algorithm will pick it up and share it with more leaders like yourselves. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content on nonprofits, board leadership, fundraising, and more. There's always more resources in my weekly newsletter and my website, changemakercafe.com. I'm Amber Melanie Smith, and I'll see you next time. Bye.